Okay, so continuing on looking at Madeleine McCann's missing or her missing child report or abduction. Here are the parents 5 years later discussing this.
Kate and Jerry McCann, please welcome to Stockholm.
Thank you.
It's been almost 5 years since Madeleine disappeared, and now you, Kate, are reliving the whole thing by writing a book about what happened. Why are you doing that?
Well, I actually started to keep a diary back in May 2007. I was advised to do it, actually, and at the time I felt it would be important for Madeleine, really, so that when we found her, we'd be able to fill in the gaps in her life. And then I also thought it'd be good for Sean and Emily as well, so that they'd have an account, really, of the truth of everything that happened.
Your twins.
That's right, yeah.
If we could start by going back to May 3rd, 2007. What's your strongest memories of Madeleine from that day?
I think the strongest memory I have is of really the photograph. It's the last photograph we have of her, and we'd had a lovely holiday. Madeleine was having a great time, and just after lunch we went over to the pool area, and she was sitting there paddling in the pool. I was sitting next to her, and she turned around and she's just beaming. And then the last time I saw her, which was probably minutes before she was taken, when she was lying asleep, and it's terrible. I've just said this a few times, but I had one of those poignant moments as a parent where I went into a room and the door was open, and I just paused for a second, and I looked and she was sound asleep. And I thought how beautiful she was. The twins were asleep in their cots, and I thought how lucky we were. And within minutes, that was shattered.
And what happened was that you went to eat with the other parents that you were.
And within minutes, that was shattered.
And what happened?
He took a long pause where his eyes closed, kind of bringing him back to that moment there where he is in the studio. I'm also noting how Kate, her face is this, you see on her face the stress that has sort of aged her, not necessarily in a bad way, but the stress has aged her over these 5 years, being worried and under a lot of mental duress. That has taken a toll on both of them, really. And this is the first time maybe 5 years later, that I'm actually seeing more emotion from him, because if we remember previous interviews, he was very rational, and he was headstrong moving forward, which he had to be for the purposes of getting through the situation at the time. You cope how you need to get through pain.
Was that you went to eat with the other parents that you were on vacation with?
That's right.
This was not far from the apartment.
It's about 50 metres as the crow flies, but about 70 metres on foot.
Yes, and as you sat there in this restaurant, you went back and forth on shift to check on the children.
Yeah,
is that right?
That's right.
And what happened when the last time you went to check?
Well, it was 10 o'clock when I went to check on Madeleine, and I walked into the sitting room of the apartment, and I noticed that the children's bedroom door was open further than we'd left it. We always close it quite far over, but just enough so some light gets in, and it's quite open. And it was our friend Matt who had checked on the children at 9:30 when he was checking on his daughter next door. And I thought to myself, well, maybe Matt's left the door open when he's checked on them. So I walked over to the bedroom door, and I was about to close it too again. And as I did that, it kind of slammed shut. And I thought, oh, there must be a draft. And I checked the door behind me, and I hadn't left that open. And then I opened the door again of the children's bedroom just to leave it open a little bit. And that's when I really looked in. And I couldn't quite make out Madeleine in her bed. And I just looked, and it was obviously quite dark, and it must be a parental thing where you don't switch a light on because you're worried about waking them. But then I realised she wasn't actually there, and I thought, well, she must have wandered through to our bedroom, and maybe that would explain why the door was open. So I went into our bedroom and she wasn't there, and that was the first time really that the panic hit. And I just ran back into her bedroom, and literally at that point, the curtains, which were closed, just kind of flew open. And that was when I noticed that the window was open as far as it could go, and the shutters outside had been raised all the way up. And then I just knew straight away that someone had taken her.
So this was your...
Yeah, man, you can tell she's really letting out. Like, this is what I say, man. Something that I have not seen in the other ones that I've covered, where there's been an abduction or a missing child. There's a consistent emotional progression. This is what I mean when I say that. There's a consistent emotional progression with, as she's telling this story, as she's reliving this story, I'm going back to that place, and it's taking me back to me losing her all over again. And we saw that with Jerry as well. So this is pretty consistent. The behavior is pretty consistent. I believe their story and what they're talking about. 70 meters though, a little bit of ways, not gonna lie, just a little bit of ways. So obviously somebody would definitely have the space and opportunity. And if you're telling me at 9:30, your friend went and checked at 9:30, and then you go back and check 30 minutes later. I mean, golly, you guys are doing a pretty good job checking every 30 minutes, just been diligent. But, you know, somebody must have had their eye on you at that point in time, because then, dang, you know, they got your schedule at that point.
First thought?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way a young child could have got out.
This decision of not eating in the apartment, it has been a lot of discussions about that, and not staying in the apartment, go to eat with the other parents, as you did every night.
We felt incredibly safe, and we were in a very quiet holiday resort. We were with a group of friends. We hardly saw anyone of an evening, and it was so close that it didn't feel very different to eating outside in your garden with the kids upstairs in the bedroom. And it literally, we were only going back to check no one had woken up. And of course, at the time, someone stealing your child was the furthest thing from our minds. And
so this was really not something you thought twice about.
It wasn't. It just felt.
I think if we'd had to think about it, or even say to each other, "Do you think that's okay?" then it wouldn't have happened. But it just felt like a very natural thing. We'll eat at the restaurant on the complex.
I think the hardest thing with this is, you know, with hindsight, we made a mistake. It was a collective mistake, but unfortunately, we can't change that. And whatever anyone may think about our decision making that night, Madeleine's completely innocent, and you know she's been taken, and it's hard for us because, you know, no one could feel more guilty than we did to think that your behavior.
As he was talking about being guilty, he started blinking slower and slower, signifying that he's going back into his head, thinking about, you know, that process all over again.
Behavior gave someone an opportunity, a risky opportunity, but one that they took. And, you know, we persecuted ourselves for that. But you've got to look forward. You can't go back. We can't change that, unfortunately. And what we've tried to do is always to look forward.
The host was kind of gazing at him, man, like, do I really believe you or not?
And it's hard for us because, you know, no one could feel more guilty than we did to think that your behaviour gave someone an opportunity, a risky opportunity, but one that they took. And, you know, we persecuted ourselves for that. But you've got to look forward. You can't go back. We can't change that, unfortunately. And what we've tried to do is always to look forward.
Were you the worrying kind of parent? I mean,
I'll answer that. I would say I wasn't, but Kate was.
Right.
I would have said that Kate was a bit overprotective, whereas, I grew up in a big family, the youngest of 5, and you feel, indestructible. But Kate was much, as an only child, maybe, I don't know, but definitely much more protective of the children than me.
There were... you
That is a man who has reflected on his mistakes and has let his pride down. That is a man who has reflected and let his pride down and come to the knowledge of some things and said, I can see how my own biases got in the way.
You came in contact very, very quickly with the Portuguese police.
Sure.
How was that experience?
We were expecting a metropolitan type response, and I remember saying to the officers, "Where's the helicopters? I want helicopters with heat-seeking equipment." And the officer kind of laughed at us and said, "This isn't, we don't have a Royal Navy and this thing." And I'm sure every single parent can understand this, because everyone has lost a child momentarily, and the terror and how frightening it is, be it in a supermarket or a playground or a park, and you just want everything done, and you want the world to stop and scream, and the response, was slow, and that's been one of the hardest things for us, because Madeleine could have been moved very easily, and the Spanish border's only about 90 minutes away, and obviously you're on the Mediterranean, and one of the aspects of why we are campaigning internationally is because she could have been taken anywhere.
What happened?
Everybody's locked in. Let me see if I can find
Just
it.
want everything done, and you want the world to stop and scream, and the response, was slow. I don't have a Royal Navy, and
She's listening, and she has a little bit of pain on her face and empathy toward what he's saying. And then you see Kate. She's locked in too. So his story is really moving people. He is really convincing people that this was an accident.
Terror and how frightening it is, be it in a supermarket or a playground or a park, and you just want everything done, and you want the world to stop and scream, and the response, was slow, and that's been one of the hardest things for us, because Madeleine could have been moved very easily, and the Spanish border's only about 90 minutes away, and obviously you're on the Mediterranean, and one of the aspects of why we are campaigning internationally is because she could have been taken anywhere.
What happened was that as time went by, you didn't really trust the Portuguese police, and they didn't trust you.
We were there for 3.5 months. We felt we had been completely eliminated from the inquiry, had been interviewed, the circumstances, and then, for whatever reason, and possibly pressure and a desire for this case to go away, it was portrayed in the media that there was very strong evidence that Madeleine was dead. People see DNA and other things, and that we were responsible for hiding her body. And
there were rumors about DNA in a car that you hired.
And I want to be absolutely clear about these things. There's two aspects. We didn't hire that car for 3.5 weeks until after Madeleine was taken. And the second aspect is there's no DNA match. When you see the files, there's a mixed sample of DNA that comes from 5 people. And all they say that some of it matched Madeleine's, but of course all of our DNA matches Madeleine's. And to be fair, it was incredibly frustrating from the time we were arguido through to the file being closed the following July. But the prosecutor's
She agrees.
final report was very clear, actually, and unequivocal that, there was no evidence that Madeleine was dead, and there was no evidence that we were involved. But certain people have chosen to ignore that information.
Which one of these media speculations was...
So, yeah, he really came on strong, man. And I like when we talk about consistency in the patterns in behavior, when we're talking about the facts of the case, like, again, he's a very rational person. So when we get to talking about the facts of the case, unlike I've seen in the JonBenet Ramsey case, he starts to spit in facts, and he is not backing down from the facts. He's not appealing to authority here and there, this, that, and the third. He knows his facts, and he knows what he's talking about. and he's addressing the rumors specifically head on, and he's doing it with confidence. He's not hesitating. He's not drawing back. He's not sitting on his heels doing it. He's very confident in what he's saying. And I love his ability to go from being super emotional, capturing his listeners with the sincerity of the story, to going into a very logical pattern, which is who he is, going into that logical pattern and saying, these are the facts of the case, and so I think, again, man, my analysis of this is they're very consistent in their behavior. I don't think they had anything to do with their daughter's disappearance, as the way Kate explains it. Somebody locked in on us and got the jump on us. They got the drop on us, and that was it. Very unfortunate. But that's the video. I appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment, engage. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And until next video, take it easy.